Hey guys, Robbie here. Today I'm going to be talking about why you should be eating more fish. In this video we'll be talking about why you should be eating more fish, what types to get and what amounts you should be eating, and a few practical tips for how to cook it. So in general, as a society, we tend to eat way less fish than we should. And especially here where I'm filming this in the Midwest, where we don't have access to the coasts, a lot of times when I do grocery store tours, people will say that they really just don't eat fish at all. So why is fish so important, fish and seafood? Well, for a number of different reasons. Number one of the major causes of our ill health today is an imbalance between pro-inflammatory omega-6 fats that come from wheat, corn, and soy, and seed oils like canola oil and margarine, and cottonseed oil and things like that, and too little omega-3 fats, these anti-inflammatory fats from fish. These should ideally be in a 1-to-1 ratio or 1-to-2. And most people today are like a 1-to-10 or a 1-to-20. So really, really heavy on the pro-inflammatory side. Another reason is there are a lot of nutrients in fish and seafood that you can't get in necessarily sufficient quantities from other things. Two that come to mind right off the bat are two very important minerals, namely iodine, which unless you're having iodized salt, it's very hard to get from non-seafood things. And selenium, both of which are really important for thyroid health and overall health. So fish is super important for you. And while grass-fed beef and pasture-raised chicken and pasture-raised pork can all be healthy for you, it's really important that you balance that out with fish and seafood as well. So let's talk about what kind to get and how much you should be eating per week and address some concerns. So ideally, when you're getting this stuff, you should be getting wild-caught fish. Both fish and seafood are very healthy. So on the fish side, salmon, halibut, cod, things like that. On the general seafood side, shellfish, things like scallops or mussels or clams, things like that. So you want to try to get it wild caught. In terms of the most nutrient dense types of fish and seafood, believe it or not, things like anchovies and sardines with the bones in them, if you're into that, can actually be super healthy. But if you're a little bit timid around fish and seafood, don't jump to that right off the bat. But those can be both super cheap and super nutrient dense. In addition to that, there's the question of how much should you be eating per week. So it really depends, but for most people, I would say ideally at least a pound per week. So if you do the math on that, most fish servings are about 6 ounces. So we're talking roughly about 3 6-ounce servings a week. And if you have an inflammatory condition or some sort of condition where you're trying to minimize inflammation in general, then maybe up to 24 ounces a week. Now, one of the main concerns I hear is about mercury and PCBs and things like that. Now, unfortunately, in the modern world, this really is a concern, but the general consensus in the functional health world is that you're doing yourself more of a disservice by not eating fish than you would be by eating the fish and getting the anti-inflammatory benefits. So again, try to maximize those wild-caught fish and seafood from sustainably caught sources, and fish that on the listing of fish with the most mercury in them, the Marine Stewardship Council says that you're not having that much in the way of mercury. Things like pilot whale meat, shark, swordfish, catfish, things like that. So try to minimize those fish with too many toxins in them, and you'll be doing yourself more of a benefit by having more fish in general. Now, what are some ways to cook it? So I don't profess to be an expert at this stuff, but I'm just going to give you 3 ways that I like to cook various things that might be beneficial to you. Number 1, salmon fillet. Put it in the oven at about 250 degrees, a little bit lower and slower with the heat for about 15 minutes with a pat of grass-fed butter on top and some salt and some lemon zest. Comes out pretty well. Another option would be some halibut. If you are worried about the fishy taste of fish, then halibut is a little bit more meaty. It's a little bit more like, sauteing a piece of chicken. So you could saute it in some ghee or some avocado oil in a saute pan, and you'll be able to cut it up much more like meat than you would a fillet of salmon. Another option would be scallops. So scallops, you can cook them super quickly in something like 4 to 5 minutes. Get your pan screaming hot with something like avocado oil or ghee. Make sure to pat your scallops nice and dry, and then put them on one by one in kind of a clockwise fashion. And then once they've seared on one side, flip them over, sear them on the other side, and you'll be good to go. So hopefully now you've got a good sense of why you should be eating fish, some tips for what kind of fish to get and the amounts of fish to get, and maybe some practical tips for how to cook it. If you're not eating fish, go out, have some. It'll improve your health and it'll improve your overall well-being. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.